Jay Bilas joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show, as promised. How are you, Jay?
I'm doing great, Rich. How are you?
I am hanging in there. Thank you so very much. Let's get right down to it. Then you were part of the worldwide leader in sports draft analysis. It is now the draft analysis season. Now that we know who gets to choose where, what do you think the Phoenix Suns are going to do with that first overall pick, Jay Bilas?
I don't know. Phoenix needs. There's not one player that's going to make Phoenix a contender. So they need pillars that they're going to be able to build on for a long period of time. So you can make a case. I don't think there's a no-brainer LeBron type player in this draft where you say, okay, clear number one and everybody else is number 2, 3, and 4. I do think that DeAndre Ayton of Arizona is the top prospect in the draft. But I think you could make a credible case, especially considering how well Phoenix knows Luka Doncic, the Slovenian kid that's playing for Real Madrid, that, in today's game, having a 6'8" guard that can really pass the ball and the ball will move with him in the game, you could put a high value on that. And he's young with experience way beyond his years, having played against men for so long. Playing in Europe. So to me, it would be between those two. I would go with Ayton, but that's just me. I mean, Ayton's like a prototype power forward in the NBA that can step away and knock down threes and play with his back to the basket and run and finish plays. I mean, he's the real deal. But there's a good case to be made for Doncic as well.
Well, yeah, obviously the fans would know Ayton more up close and personal in that regard, but I imagine that's not the reason why a team should go ahead and make a trade, because the Suns fans could fall in love with Doncic the minute he shows up, right? So,
oh yeah, I don't think you go I think teams have made mistakes going with sort of the local kid, thinking it's going to sell tickets, and that lasts for all of about 15 minutes. I remember with New York, everybody was so disappointed with Kristaps Porzingis.
Yes.
And he's been as big a fan favorite as he can possibly have. Hopefully, he'll come back healthy and fulfill the promise he showed, because he's proven to be the real deal. And when I watched him on film, I wasn't sure about him, wasn't sure about his body and all these different things in the NBA. And it proved to be he really was a unicorn as far as how successful he was right away.
The Knicks choosing 9th overall, and then you got the Clippers at 12th and 13th, Denver 14, 15. Who do you think is now? If I asked you this question last year, you probably weren't going to spit out the name of Donovan Mitchell anyway. But who do you think could be that guy this year coming out that is sort of a mid-round pickup that has the opportunity to be a Rookie of the Year dynamo?
Rookie of the Year, I don't know. I don't know that it's not very often you see that. Usually, Rookie of the Year comes out of the top 7. But, I'm a big fan. I like Lonnie Walker from Miami. One, he's got great hair and is a great kid. He's the guy that watches more Animal Planet than basketball. But he had some injury issues to start the year, so got off to a slower start. Maybe didn't show how good that he can be early on in the year, but made some big shots throughout the year. Super athletic. I do like Zaire Smith, the kid from Texas Tech, but he's a longer-term player. He's a ridiculous athlete, kind of in the Donovan Mitchell realm, but he's not as polished of a player because he's a lot younger. The guy, Rich, that I think is going to be the most interesting player in the draft as to how you process sort of how good he is versus what he's been through and his body is going to be Michael Porter Jr., the kid out of Missouri, who could be he could have been healthy, and if he'd come right out of high school, you would have said, "Hey, man, he might be the 1 or 2 pick." That's how talented he is. But he got injured. He had surgery. He played all of 2 minutes at the start of the year for Missouri, and didn't come back until the SEC tournament when he was out of shape and didn't show very well. So there are a lot of kind of question marks. It's not often you say, well, we have to find out what the doctors say, and then we'll get to the basketball part. But if the doctors say if there are no red flags on his medical, he's a top 3 talent that could wind up going 8, 9, 10. That's where I would guess, and I'm just guessing, that you're kind of saying, you know what, that might be worth the risk at 9 to be able to get a top 3 talent at 9, 10. If he falls that far. But who knows? Maybe somebody will take him at 3 or 4, and then you get a player that falls to you further down that you wouldn't have expected otherwise.
Of course, that plays out later in June. Jay Bilas here in the Rich Eisen Show. I would be remiss, Jay, if I did not ask how the news of sports gambling about to become so much more prevalent on the state level hit you when you heard how the NCAA might have its hand out when it all comes down to it. What are your thoughts on that, Jay?
Rich, I probably my first thought was to what my grandfather would have thought when Prohibition was repealed. Sort of the idea that everybody's doing this anyway. Why are we prohibiting this? And I make that comparison because there are a lot of bad things that come along with alcohol, but most of society handles it pretty well, and we manage it. And I look at gambling the same way, sort of as I don't want to say harmless vice, but for most people it is harmless. Like I don't think the feds are going to come after me on this, but I'm in a football pool with my friends for $20 a week, and it makes the games more interesting. And the emails that go back and forth when there's a backdoor cover, on Monday Night Football, it's fun. And games that I wouldn't have been interested in otherwise, I'm interested in. And we do the same thing with the majors in golf, and we throw a few bucks in, and everybody picks players, and it makes it more enjoyable. And I think that's the way it is for the overwhelming majority of people who are interested in sports.
But in terms of college football, though, or basketball, if a kid is playing a sport that now, I guess the governing body is going to have maybe wetting their beak a little bit. I mean, does that give fuel to your idea of paying the players, Jay?
Everything gives fuel to that, Rich. I mean, I as the money grows, whether it's coming from television or merchandising or apparel licensing deals or just the apparel deals you have for the teams, just the big gap between amateurism and the billions of dollars that are in the game are going to make that argument. We're having that anyway. So when you add in the gambling portion of it and additional revenue streams there, these games are, live sports, whether it's college or pro, is going to continue to make money. And look, I ultimately think that my way of viewing this, even though reasonable minds could differ, that my way of viewing this is going to come to pass. Whether it comes to pass in the next 10 years or in our lifetimes, I don't know. But amateurism isn't going to survive while billions of dollars are being made off these players. That's just not going to. It's not going to be sustained long term. But I'm sure people in the 30s said the same thing, and it's still going. The NCAA is going to fight tooth and nail to keep their ability to keep all the money. But we've already seen name, image, and likeness is coming. I mean, the commission, the Rice Commission, even said Condoleezza Rice is out there saying that name, image, and likeness should belong to the players. And when that step is taken, it's not far behind when the schools are going to go, you know what? We need to control this, so we should just pay them so that they're not out cutting all these side deals that may be counter to what we're doing.
And how'd you do in your fantasy and your football pool, Jay?
It depends on the year. I do surprisingly well some years. I can tell you that what we do is we throw a few bucks in each week, and you have to pick 2 games against the spread, but you have to win them both to get into the money. And it's surprisingly how hard that is to do. It sounds really easy, but man, those guys in the, as Reese Davis calls them, our friends in arid regions. They know what they're doing. Because it is hard to pick those things and pick them correctly.
Good thing you've got your Duke degree. Jay, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Rich. Thank you.
That's Jay Bilas.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.